Hello everyone and welcome back to my home. This is the Cupcake Jemma channel. I'm Cupcake Jemma, in case you didn't know. And a few weeks ago, I visited one of my favorite bakeries in London, Chai Guys Bakehouse, which is in Notting Hill. Hopefully you saw that video where I got to go through the process of making one of their most favorite bakes, the cardamom bun. And since that video went up, it's been recipe please this, recipe please that. I have obeyed and I've developed a recipe of my own for cardamom buns, kind of loosely based on their ones. I really hope it does it justice because their buns are literally perfection. Clotilde was very kind and took us through the process, and so I knew that the dough itself was made with something called a Tangzhong, which we've covered in our milk bread recipe. So check that out if you haven't seen it already. And that is where you cook out a little bit of flour with a liquid such as water or milk, and it helps to sort of activate the gluten a little bit earlier and sort of hydrate it. And what that does is it creates a really soft bread when you bake it, and also bread which stays softer for longer. So I've done that. I've actually made my dough already and it's in the fridge at the moment just to stop it from proving. I've already just had it proving in a warm spot for an hour and it's doubled in size, but I just wanted to slow it down while I tell you all about it. So it's in the fridge at the moment, and actually, happily, that makes it much easier to handle when it comes to it. But for now, I'll just walk you through the process. So the Tangzhong was the first thing I did. So in a small pan, I put 25 grams of strong white bread flour with 65 grams of whole milk. I just whisked that together just to hydrate all the flour, heated that up, whisking it all the time for a few minutes. After a little while, it starts to thicken, and eventually it goes pretty paste-like. At this point, you can turn it off and take it off the heat. Then I transferred my Tangzhong, which was still warm, to my mixer. Then I added 90 grams of lukewarm milk, along with a large egg, 240 grams of strong white bread flour, 4 grams of yeast, 30 grams of sugar, and then on the other side of the bowl, I put the salt because you don't want to mix the salt and the yeast, otherwise it will kill it. And then I just had that on my mixer with my dough hook attachment and just got that mixing first of all slowly, just to start combining those ingredients. And then I increased the speed a little bit. Now that dough then needs to mix on a medium speed for about 8 to 10 minutes so that all the flour is nicely hydrating. The yeast will be sort of waking up in the warmth of it all. It should be coming away from the sides of the bowl. At this point, you can add your soft butter. Now I had 60 grams of soft spreadable butter. While the mix was still going round, I put that in teaspoon amounts, just giving it a few seconds of mixing between each addition. And then once it was all in, I just increased the speed a little bit, but still you don't want to go too fast. Now it needs to be kneaded. We all need to be kneaded. I kneaded it in the mixer for about 5 to 8 minutes. After a few minutes, I did my window pane test and it was dreamy. So all you need to do there is just stop the mixer, pull a little bit of the dough up off the dough hook. You should be able to stretch it really thinly without it breaking too much. Once you've achieved window pane status, you need to turn out the dough onto the worktop, just using a dough scraper or something similar. Shape it into a round ball, and then I popped it into a greased container. I like to put mine in a rectangular container rather than a bowl for this because I'm going to be rolling it into a rectangle. It just makes it a bit easier. And then it needs its first proof. So this is an hour in a warm-ish spot. It ideally needs to be around 26 degrees. That's the primo temperature for proving. I do have a dough proving setting in my oven, but that was just a bit too hot and it was going a bit crazy in my tests. So I did my classic trick, which is to boil a kettle, put it in a tray at the bottom of the oven, and then shut the door with that heat in there. And every now and then, if it felt a little bit hot, I would just stuff the door open a little bit with with my oven gloves, just so it didn't get too warm. Oh, and that's doubled in size. Now you can see it's looking pretty good, but I wanted to do this next bit with you, so I've put that into the fridge to sort of slow down the process. Because we need to make the filling, which is of course cardamom butter. Now we've done a couple of recipes for cinnamon rolls on the channel, and this is essentially the same kind of deal. Butter, sugar, spice, salt. So I've got 80 grams of soft unsalted butter. To that I'm going to add 80 grams of light soft brown sugar, 1.5 teaspoons of ground cardamom, 2 grams of sea salt, and then just a little bit of lime zest. We're talking like 3 or 4 passes on the grater, just to give it a little brightness. And then I'm using a handheld mixer. I'm just going to mix that all together until it's well combined and a nice spreadable consistency. As you can see, we have a plump load of dough. So that was proving in a warm spot for about an hour. And then, like I said, I put it in the fridge. If you wanted, you could make your dough and prove it in the fridge overnight. And that is actually really nice, because then it's really easy to handle when it's in the fridge. And also it's just a slower process. It does develop more flavour in there. So it's completely up to you if you want to do that. Anyway, I'm going to get it out, and as you can see, it's fit to its lovely rectangular container, which means that hopefully it'll stay in a rough rectangle shape. I'm going to just lightly dust my worktop, not too much. Tease it out a little bit, might need a bit of help. There. Now it has proved quite a bit, so I'm going to just knock it back just with my fingers. And as I said, when this has been in the fridge overnight, it is so much easier to handle. Right now, it's actually quite soft and quite fragile. And so I actually do prefer doing it from the fridge. But like I said, I wanted to make this video for you, and I didn't have all the time to do it overnight. So here we are, rolling with it. So I have a rolling pin, because I don't have like a fancy pants laminator in my kitchen, sadly. I'm just going to roll it out, which will knock back some of the air, which is great. I'm going to roll it out into a rectangle shape, and just every now and then, just make sure it's not stuck to the worktop. So once it is roughly 10 by 13 inches, you want to grab back your cardamom butter and make sure it's really, really soft and spreadable. And then just dollop little blobs of your butter all over the top. What we don't want to do is to dump it all in one spot and then try and spread it to the rest of the dough, because then it's really going to pull. And then just using a palette knife, really gently, just spread that all over the surface of your dough. And then we're going to do a couple of folds. So we're just going to bring one side in a third of the way, and then the other side over that. Now when you have a rectangle that's roughly 9 inches by 14 inches, what we need to do is just tidy it up a little bit. I'm just going to take the minimal amount of dough off just to get myself a straight line. And again on the other side. And then this should make 6. So if you want, you can mark it out. They're going to be just over an inch thick. I like to use a pizza roller because that's what they used in the bakery, and it makes me feel like a pro. So just gently, carefully slice down like this. And then if you remember in the bakery, what they then do is make a little slit up the middle of each ribbon, stopping before you get to the end of each side. Great, so make sure you have a couple of baking trays with baking paper on them so that you have somewhere to put your lovely cardamom buns. The process of doing this was really fun. You grab one of your ribbons, give it a little stretch and pat, I suppose. And again, this is much easier when it's cold dough. It's a little bit less easy here at home when it's warm. You have to twist them. So when it's cold, you're able to kind of go opposite directions quite nice. Actually, it turns out I'm doing it quite well. If you need to pick the ends up and kind of do it manually, that's okay. No one's judging you here. That looks pretty nice. It's got a nice twist. And then you have to get one end and start making a kind of coil, like a snail shell. And it's really important to tuck that first little knobble in, otherwise it'll bake out like a little tower. So once you have your initial snail shell shape going on, you grab the other end of your ribbon and just loosely drape it round the outside and then tuck the bottom one in underneath. And then you can transfer that to your baking sheet and then carry on. Right, that's my 2 trays ready to have their second proof. So I'm just going to cover them with a light muslin or a tea towel or a bit of cling film just loosely on the top, and I'm going to put them into my oven with my just boiled water for probably about 30 or 40 minutes until they are plump. And the way to check when something's proved just right, just give it a little poke. And if it springs back really quickly, it's underproved, so you need to leave it in there for a little bit longer. If you take your finger away and it's a slow return, but with a slight indent still remaining, that is perfectly proved. If your finger just goes in it and it just kind of disintegrates, then I'm afraid you've overproved it and that's kind of game over, but let's just hope you do it right. Once your cardamom buns have had their second proof and they are perfectly proved, you're obviously going to need the oven. So if, like me, your cardamom buns have been proving in the oven, you're going to want to take them out before you get the oven up to temperature. I like to put mine in the fridge just to kind of hold that proof, and then whack the temperature of the oven up to 185 degrees C. I'm using my fan assisted oven, and bake them for 12 to 15 minutes. If you have two shelves like me, you might want to swap them round halfway just to make sure they're both browning evenly. But it should take around 12 to 15 minutes. My buns are looking so glorious. While they were baking, I actually just knocked up a little simple syrup. This is just 50 grams of caster sugar with 50 grams of water. I slung in a couple of burst cardamom pods just to give it a little extra cardamom goodness. I just popped that over a medium heat, let it bubble for a minute or two, and then just took it off the heat, and now it's just this simple syrup. I'm gonna brush the tops of them to make them glisten and pop. My whole kitchen just smells so delicious. It's really taking me back to my trip to Chai Guys. Here it is in all its glory, looking absolutely gorgeous. Now, so I have a little bit of a crunch and crisp on the outside, but on the inside, really lovely, beautiful, soft dough, and a really delicious, not overpowering cardamom butter flavor. So, so good. I haven't got my belly button bit yet. Oh. It's still warm. So I hope you have enjoyed my cardamom bun recipe. I really do want you to give it a go, and if you do, please let me know. Also, if you want to do something different, like shape them in the traditional cinnamon bun way, go ahead and do that. Why the hell not? Thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed developing this recipe. I've enjoyed eating all of the rejects that I had over the last couple of weeks, because even the rejects were really delicious. Please give this a go. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, let me know if you've been to Chai Guys since watching the video, because, well, you just need to go because it's so good. And then you can maybe make your own cardamom bun and compare them. I don't know. Anyway, I will be back soon with another recipe or a bakery tour, whichever comes first, and I will see you then. Please, in the meantime, if you have any cookbooks you want me to review on Cooks the Books, then let me know in the comments below, because I have so many, but they're all favourites. Maybe there's one I haven't heard of before. So let me know about that, because I love doing those. And yeah, until then, stay classy. Cardamom buns. Oh, cardamom buns. You are so delicious. Yeah.